What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about what the PS5 will do to improve Miles Morales. Now, I thought this would kind of be a fun, different video to do on this channel because we've talked about Miles a lot, and if you guys have watched these past videos that I've done, you know that I'm a big fan of the leap to PS5. I would like more games to see that leap or to only be on PS5 as the months go on. Miles, obviously, being on PS4, nothing wrong with that. It's very consumer friendly, and I'm completely okay with it. I'm getting it on PS5, but I thought, well, let's try to break it down and talk about, how big of a difference is this game even going to be on a PlayStation 5? And I mean the specific details. Now, Insomniac has told us a little bit about it, so we will jump into there as well. Really quickly, if you guys like this kind of video, make sure you're leaving a like. Make sure you guys are subscribed with the bell icon turned on. If you guys aren't following me on Twitter, my Twitter handle is PodcastNow15. All my other social media stuff is in the description below, okay? So everybody talks about ray tracing. I mean, I love talking about ray tracing. It's a great thing, but we know for Miles for PS5, I mean, ray tracing is important, and it's one of the most distinct differences between Spider-Man and I guess technically the Spider-Man remastered. I guess this counts that. So what is the difference between the PS4 and PS5 version? Well, let's talk about what the PS5 version has. So remember, this was kind of unclear until Game Informer gave us the extra info around like a week and a half ago, where there's going to be dynamic 4K 60 frames per second. And this is called the performance mode, which is like dynamic 4K, which means we're looking at it rendering at a lower resolution and it's being upscaled. So this is more along the lines of very much it was kind of built for PS4 and it's being up-resed for PS5, okay? That or upscale, whatever phrase you want to use, that is pretty much what they're talking about here. Will there be that much of a difference between this and Spider-Man, PS4? I mean, because ultimately, when we're talking about Miles, or even Miles on this, that is something you have to think about. What is going to be the actual difference when I'm playing this game between the PS5 and PS4 version? Well, this one is going to be not the biggest jump, known to man, okay? And this is kind of the thing that we're going to most likely see a lot of developers doing with their games. They get the free upgrades or the games that have current gen and next gen, if they can run it at 60. I mean, it could be 30, it could be 60, but if they do run it at 60 frames per second, 4K, and having it just be a little bit buffered from what the PS4 version, or you can think about Xbox as well, from what that could do, okay? But we know that they're also, and this is exclusive for PS5, right? There will be a fidelity mode that will offer true native 4K, but also with ray tracing. And ray tracing, if you guys don't know, just Google it. There's actually some really good articles. In fact, if you actually type in Miles Morales or Spider-Man ray tracing, you can find an entire article written. I think it's like Android Central did it, and it breaks down very detailed what they're doing with their ray tracing, how maybe some of it doesn't look the greatest in the world. Some of it actually looks really good, what they have to sacrifice to do one versus the other. It's a fantastic article, and if you guys are really into that kind of tech stuff or ray tracing in general, I definitely advise you guys to read it. But this is with 30 frames per second, so they can't go all the way. There is no 60 frames per second ray tracing. There is only 30 frames per second, okay? Not the biggest deal right now. What you will find, and this is what you'll find by those articles or if you read into it, the issue with the 4K 60 frames per second is it runs very well. It looks very good, but they're sacrificing the ray tracing, making everything look, I guess, like, the textures, how the lighting bounces off of it. A lot of, everybody talks about like the puddle effect, right? In some of those screenshots where there's like water on the streets. They're sacrificing a lot of that to be able to do 60 frames per second, okay? When you drop it down to 30 frames per second, they're able, because there's not so much going on, right? It's not the greatest for the most fluid gaming experience, which actually may end up impacting Miles because it is a faster game, but they're sacrificing some of that, but to be able to, I guess, just generally make everything seem a whole lot more detailed, okay? So that, in terms of visuals, in terms of how the game is going to function, is the biggest change. One other thing I do want to talk about, and I mean, that's pretty much it, but one thing I do want to talk about that isn't mentioned in any of these things, and I think is a huge, huge difference between what we will get on the PS5 and what we will get on the PS4 is the DualSense controller. I've talked about it before. The DualSense, I think, is as close to a system seller for a controller, if that's even possible, you know what I mean, as humanly possible. I mean, I'm more of a I play PlayStation. I do have an Xbox, but a lot of people, will sometimes call me a Sony fanboy. I don't agree, but if you want to go that route, whatever. I think the and what I'm saying is that maybe there's bias here, but the DualSense, I think, is a phenomenal controller from everything we've seen. They're actually, rumored to be in the wild. Some people actually have their hands on them, but from everything we've seen, I adore it. What it can actually do, the haptic feedback is incredible, and I think it's really going to be something very, very special that the PS5 is going to have that just nothing else is going to be able to compete for it. So that is a difference. Now remember, if you play a PS4 game on your PS5, you can use your DualShock, but the DualSense controller are just for the PS. So like when I'm getting this game on the PS5, I'm getting the PS5 version of it. So I will be able to use the DualSense. And remember, there's a lot of feel in that DualSense controller of when Miles is punching, right? Like his Venom punch, all that kind of stuff. You are going to feel like an electric buildup in the controller and feel force when you press those buttons. One of those things, I talked about over the past couple weeks, the Rhino boss fight, while I'm not the biggest fan of it in terms of it seems a little repetitive to me. I mean, again, visually amazing. I'm not saying it's going to be a bad boss fight. At the end of the day, it is just a boss fight. It's not the biggest deal in the world. But one thing that will stand out that I, mentioned is that, we don't know how it's going to literally feel. Now there's a difference between watching it. I mean, when you play like The Last of Us Part 2 and you off somebody or however you want to use it. I mean, the game is brutal. The game is violent. The game is heavy. Like when you're swinging things and when you're shooting, they all feel like they have weight. The enemies feel like they are being impacted by it. It's one of the very, very few games that is able to do that, and it does it, I think, is better than, I would say better or equal to any game on the planet. You know what I mean? I really think The Last of Us Part 2 is good, and that is not even feeling it in your hands in the controller. Imagine The Last of Us Part 2 built like for next year, built for the PS5, if it happens, or like The Last of Us Part 3, let's say. I mean, imagine that, because not only will you feel it because of the animations, because of the voice work, because of the visuals, because of the, like, literally the mechanics where the weapons do feel like they have weight, but also now in your hand, because of the DualSense, you can feel certain things, right? It can give you like a sensation, and that is, to me, again, the biggest, I think it's the biggest game changer for a controller ever. I truly do believe that. Now, I don't have it yet. I don't know how every single game or games going forward, besides the ones that we know already, are going to implement it, but when talking about Miles, I really do feel like that is a big thing. The difference between the PS4 and PS5 version pretty much is going to be, I guess, the 4K thing, right? Because if you have the PS4, the base model, it can't do that. But if you have the PS4 Pro, it can. So if you're doing base PS4 to PS5, I mean, yeah, the 4K is different. The 60 frames, obviously. Yeah, there's a lot of things that are up-res, again, upscaled with that's going to make it better. But is it going to be the biggest thing in the world? Maybe not. When you look at the 30 frames per second, you could actually consider it losing a little bit of its value there. But again, it's sacrificing that for the benefit of ray tracing. But you throw all that in with the DualSense, and suddenly the PS5 version really is different enough. And I do give it credit. Again, I'm one that over time really does want to see a lot of games leaving and just being on next gen. But for the time being, is there enough reason where if you have, say, a PS4 and PS5, is there enough reason to get this game for the PS5 specifically? Like, what are those reasons? I think the reasons in this video and just in general are very, very good and will push a lot of people to get this game. And again, when you look at this game in terms of how it could push the PS5's, the actual hardware, I think it can do an insanely good job. So, guys, let me know in the comments below. Are you looking forward to it? Are you getting this game on the PS5 for these kind of things? Let me know. As always, again, make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. Hit the bell icon. Follow me on Twitter, Podcast Now 15. I'm going to be doing more Miles videos very, very soon. We got a few more weeks until it comes out, so we got some really fun stuff planned. Not even just me, but with actually a guest coming very, very soon. And I hope to see you guys there.